Okay, I'll swap. Yeah, I am a little uncomfortable being the person between you and your food, but I guess it's appropriate. So I will try to go as quickly as possible so that you can get the information that you need and also, fill your nutritional needs. So first off, just to tell you about myself, so the best place to get nutrition information is not from celebrities nor Netflix documentaries. Okay, will you please promise me if you watch a Netflix documentary, you won't believe it? Okay. This is my quote, just because someone knows how to eat doesn't make them an expert in nutrition. I've been a board certified specialist in oncology nutrition for 10 or 12 years now, and it now never ceases to amaze me the amount of misinformation that people get. They get it from their friends, they get it from their neighbors, they get it from social media, they get it from, chain letters and, emails, and I find that people have more bad nutrition information than good nutrition information. So it's important that you know that the information you get about nutrition comes from a reliable source. So I am a registered dietitian. If you don't know what that means, it means we have 4-year degrees in nutrition. Okay. I have a master's degree in public health, and to be a dietitian, you have to do an internship. And I am board certified specialist in oncology nutrition. I have to take that exam every 5 years, and that is not fun, but it does help, I think, make you feel confident in knowing that someone knows what they're talking about. So blah, 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 all about me. This is how I typically help people understand the role of nutrition when it comes to cancer, because I find that people often are on one end of the spectrum or the other. Hopefully you're somewhere in the middle, but some people believe that nutrition doesn't have any influence or role at all. And then other people believe that it can cure cancer. And the truth is that it's neither of those. Okay, so nutrition is not a cure for cancer, but nutrition does help to keep your body as healthy as possible. So obviously you need good nutrition. Malnutrition is not a good thing. It affects outcomes in a negative way. So this is my picture. You like that? I made that myself. The whole person. I can't actually draw a person, so I just, put a yellow circle. So the whole person, the role of nutrition is to repair and maintain all the cells of your body. So everything that's in there. And then treatment, your targeted treatments will go directly towards the tumor, right? And sometimes you have those side effects from treatments that affect the other cells of your body. And so the better you can get your nutrition status, the more likely and the more effective they are at healing up themselves after surgery, after chemo, all those things. So when somebody says, oh, you should, try this pill because it's a cure for cancer, you guys know, of course, there's no magic pill, right? But a lot of people do get caught off guard by headlines. And surely it's something that we all really want to believe, but there's no proof that there's any one food or nutrition supplement that would be a cure to cancer. So these are the goals for nutrition during treatment. And the challenge, I guess, for a lot of people is that most of us know what healthy eating looks like. We've been taught our whole lives, our families teach us, okay, eat fruits and vegetables and all these different things. But the challenge is sometimes during treatment, you just physically cannot do that. And so the nice thing about being an oncology dietitian is that I don't have to be a food Nazi. And I can sort of allow this freedom for people to figure out how can you nourish yourself the best way possible given your circumstances. And that, I think, is really where a dietitian can come in helpful. If you're not able to figure that out, you need that consultant. So our goals during treatment are to meet calorie, protein, and nutrient needs so that you can preserve your muscle, stay strong, be able to be active. Adhere to your treatment protocol, because doctors don't like it when you miss treatments because that affects your long-term prognosis, and improve your quality of life and your long-term outcomes. This is actually a recommendation, if no nutrition-related side effects are going on, then we recommend that you follow the current recommendations for after treatment. So even people who are currently in treatment, if they're not having any nutrition-related side effects, we'd say, all right, let's get you on a healthy diet as soon as possible. So that's a lot of what I'm going to focus on today is what are the current recommendations for cancer survivors. Granted, everybody in the room is kind of in a different place. And so I'm happy to answer those questions later, or you can contact me or be sure to reach out to your resources. But For today's purposes, we're going to talk about the evidence-based recommendations for cancer survivors regarding nutrition. And then I'll throw in some tweaks here and there. So after treatment's over, survivors should follow the recommendation for cancer risk reduction. I always put these up here because I feel like this is the way the medical recommendations work, right? You're like, what are you talking about? We say these things and you're not quite sure what we're really saying. So before, we're like, well, if you don't have treatment-related side effects, then follow the recommendations for after treatment. And then after treatment, we say, okay, well, follow the recommendations for cancer risk reduction. So it kind of brings us full circle back around to the fact that this is the perfect time to focus on a healthy lifestyle. And the great thing is that you don't have to eat differently than like the rest of your family unless you're having specific issues going on. So some people will think, oh, well, I have to eat differently because I've faced a cancer diagnosis. And really what we're recommending for the whole public are the same things we recommend for cancer survivors. Here's the trick, though. Most people aren't doing it anyway, right? So even when we survey cancer survivors, they're not following the recommendations. They possibly are eating even fewer fruits and vegetables than the general American public. And how's the general American public doing? Not so good, right? So the good news is it's not too easy to impress us, okay? All right, so it's not a guarantee. Certainly, we all know people who did everything right. They still face a diagnosis. We know people who do everything wrong. Bless their hearts. You know, they live forever. But with healthy choices, I say you can put the odds in your favor, and generally you feel better. All right, so these are the current evidence-based recommendations from the American Institute for Cancer Research. So if you want a good, solid organization to get your information from, it's AICR. They have great consumer information too. So it's not just all this science. It have a lot of really useful things for survivors. So the first recommendation, this is my favorite one. If you just remember one thing, this would be the one I encourage you to remember. Eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans. And so we call this a plant-based diet. It doesn't mean you can't have meat, all right? So when we say plant-based diet, we mean you eat plants. It's less about what you don't eat. It's about what you do eat. And we need you to eat lots of plants because they have important nutrients called phytochemicals, which is the basis for a cancer-fighting diet. Things like antioxidants, all those things that you know are good for you, you find them in plant foods. And so we need you to eat lots of them. Sometimes it is a challenge if you cannot digest, absorb, do well with high fiber diets. And so we tweak that sometimes. Sometimes for people, it's cooking your food that can make it easier to digest. So raw fruits and vegetables might be difficult to digest and absorb, but cooked ones you'd be okay with. Removing the skin. Sometimes blending them makes it easier to digest. And then this is the one case that I actually say juicing might have a place. I'm not a big fan of juicing because you basically remove a lot of nutrition. However, if that nutrition that you remove is what's giving you digestive problems, then juicing can be a source of good nutrition. So that's kind of something that I work with people on. All right, so recommendation number 2, limit consumption of, quote, fast foods and other processed foods high in fats, starches, and sugars. So there's strong evidence that consuming fast foods and a Western-type diet are causes of excess weight gain. And more importantly, these diets are also lacking in important nutrients. I think this is the biggest deal. It's not, it's that when you tend to eat like the typical American diet, they eat lots of junk food, yes, but that junk food crowds out the opportunity for them to get in the healthy foods. And so not only are they overdoing it on the junk foods, but they're majorly underdoing what their body really needs to function. All right, so truth number 3, limit consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages. So I say that my number 1 myth that I hear people ask or comment on is that, quote, sugar feeds cancer. So you hear me saying this is a myth, right? This is a very complicated topic that I can't go into today, but it is not true. You know, certainly we don't want you over-consuming, like here's this recommendation, but we can all find some moderation. So what we want you to drink most of the time is water, unsweetened tea, unsweetened coffee. You know, the Starbucks mocha is 4 pumps of syrup. If you're not aware, I'm like, okay, by the time you get the 4 pumps of syrup and the whole milk and the whipped cream, you know, and the chocolate sauce on top, like that's not just a coffee, that's dessert. And, people go by the drive-thru every day and get that for breakfast. Dessert for breakfast. Okay, must be nice. Truth number 4, limit consumption of red meats, beef, pork, and lamb. Yes, pork is a red meat. Who's heard pork? What is it? The other white meat, yeah. So turns out that, marketing people don't always tell the truth, all right? Marketing, PR, they sell things. So I say they're full of lies, but, I can be nicer, I guess. They're not lying, they're just misleading. So limit consumption of those to 12 to 18 ounces per week, which I actually think is pretty lenient. So if you've heard, red meat's bad, it turns out that, our limit is 12 to 18 ounces a week. So that gives some room. Processed meats are the ones that I think get picked up in the news a lot. A couple years ago, it was like this big thing that bacon causes cancer, and it was all the headlines. And I was like, first of all, this isn't new news about the processed meats. Like, we've been talking about this for a while. So we do know that there is an increase in risk, but it really depends how much you're exposing yourself to that. So it's not like you can never have bacon, right? It's about how often are you having it. We don't have a safe level of recommendation for processed meats. So we say use in moderation, which is really not that helpful, right? So I say that if you do something 3 times a week, it's a habit. So do you want to make a habit out of it? That's kind of where I help my clients make decisions. I don't make food rules for people. You got to make your own food rules, okay? All right, truth number 5, which I think is often overlooked, is to limit alcohol consumption because there's convincing evidence that alcohol does increase risk for cancer. This is where I sometimes push back to people who are like, well, sugar's evil, you should never eat sugar. And I'm like, hey, so do you enjoy wine? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. They can figure out moderation in alcohol, but not in sugar. I don't know. So we do know that this increases risk. And so we want you to make sure that if you are drinking alcohol, that you do so only in moderation. However, we don't tell people to go out and drink it, okay? So if you're not a drinker, we don't recommend you start. And that whole red wine and heart disease thing, it's not a recommendation anymore, okay? All right, truth number 6. Okay, this would be my favorite. I should make this number 2. Don't use supplements for cancer prevention. How many of you have someone tried to sell you a supplement, a juice, a pill, a powder, right? So the truth is, for most people, it is possible to obtain adequate nutrition from a healthy diet that includes the right foods and drinks. There is no evidence that consuming nutrition in pill form promotes good health, with the exception that when you go to the doctor, you get your blood checked. If you have deficient levels, you need supplements to bring them back up. And it should be that your doctor's monitoring that and you check it 3 months later, like I've had low iron. You cannot bring it back up just with food. I need a supplement, but I'm checking back on that. I don't recommend taking supplements just because, all right? And usually someone who's selling them to you, it's like really expensive. So be cautious with that. Your body prefers nutrients in food, not pills. I see pills as the most processed form of nutrition that you could ever get. You cannot take all the nutrition out of a carrot and put it in a pill. Otherwise, that pill is going to look like a carrot because that's what a carrot is. Like, you want all the nutrients that's in the food. You don't need to take it in pill form. Okay. So this is how I look at it. This is nutrition from a positive viewpoint. You want to think about when you sit down to eat or when you drink something, that's an opportunity to promote your health. It's your opportunity to provide your body the nutrients that it needs to function, because there's no other way that it's going to get those nutrients except through eating or drinking. All right, so phytochemicals, those are those plant chemicals. They're biologically active components of plants. When we eat the plant, they help our immune systems to promote health, okay? So basically, you sit down to eat, you got lots of plants on your plate, you chew them up, you swallow. If I did like an interactive activity like the exercise one, I'd have you with a fork and a plate and, like put it in your mouth, and I'd make you chew like 15 times and then swallow and take a drink, and then so that you're really tasting each bite, but also appreciating the food that's there. Okay, so phytochemicals. You get phytochemicals from plants. different color plants. It's found in food, not in pills. And the more you can get, the better. So this is what I say is your phytochemical meter. When you wake up in the morning, it's at 0. Every time you eat a plant food that's not too processed, it adds it up. The higher you get, the better. I'm going to rush through this so you can get to your food. But basically, this is like the typical American. So if each tick mark is a half a cup of fruits and vegetables, I'm being very generous here that they have a cup and a half of fruits and vegetables in a day. That's a lot for the typical American. But you can see if you look at some of the healthier choices with every single meal and snack that could have been chosen, you could fill up your phytochemical meter pretty easy. And what I'll say about this is also reminding you that this is the opportunity cost. So by always choosing the processed foods, you miss out on the nutrients that your body needs to function. So it's not an all or nothing thing. You can always have choices throughout the day that gets you closer to your phytochemical meter being filled up. Similar with the plate, right? Typical American covers half their plate in meat. The most of the rest of their plate in some kind of processed starchy food and a vegetables with cheese sauce that's not real cheese. So where are they getting phytochemicals? Basically just under the cheese sauce because they're using processed grains and a big old piece of meat, right? Versus the plate that we recommend. I mean, it's not fancy. It is what the government recommends, which some people don't like. But the truth is, this is a healthy way to eat. So fill half your plate with fruits and or vegetables, a quarter of your plate with a whole grain, and a quarter of your plate with protein. If your protein is a plant protein, beans, nuts, seeds, tofu, then you get bonus points, right? Because your whole plate is giving you plants. You don't have to be a vegetarian all the time. You don't have to be a vegan all the time, right? You could be a vegan some of the time to help get your phytochemical meter up to the top, and some vegan foods are good. People always ask me, are you a vegan? I'm like, sometimes. So if those of us who are like sometimes vegans and sometimes vegetarians like a label, we call ourselves flexitarians. Because everybody wants a label these days, so now we all get one. So this is what we recommend. Honestly, I tell people sometimes it's not the foods that you're choosing, it's the proportion of the foods on your plate that can make the biggest difference in adding those phytochemicals up for the day. So no single food or food substance can cause cancer or cure cancer. It's really about that balance of getting what you need. So I told you for a habit, I kind of think of, is it 3 times a week? If you're doing that, it's a habit, is a good habit or a bad habit. And then I use the 80-20 rule. So there's no reason you have to be 100% perfect with your diet. You know, I don't like the term clean eating because it infers that there's some kind of dirty eating. There's no dirty eating, okay? So what we want is a good balance. So if we can get 80% of the time you're choosing the foods because they nourish your body and 20% of the time you choose the foods because they nourish your soul, then that's pretty good because we got good quality of life. We're enjoying some of our favorite foods, but we're also nourishing our bodies. Most people, I think, are sort of the opposite. So 20% of the time, they choose the foods that are good for their bodies, and 80% of the time, they're feeding their soul, their emotions, their whatever else. And so we got to figure that out and get the balance back. So here's the conclusion. Keep calm. Please eat your vegetables. I know it sounds simple, but like seriously, breakfast, lunch, dinner, have fruits and vegetables. There is resources here. These are my recommended resources. I don't know if you have stuff you're sending out afterwards, but you can send this out, and you can always connect with me. So I write cancerdietitian.com. It's part of our programs at Cancer Services. We're a nonprofit. I have a podcast, the Cancer Dietitian podcast. If you got people selling you cancer nutrition myths and you want to point them in the right direction without having to educate them yourselves, you can send them there. And I'm on social media, and you can get more information. So that's it. I hope you enjoy your lunch. I don't even know what it is, but...